Picture this: you're only 8 years old. Your hands are raw, your lungs ache, and for 12 endless hours a day, you're trapped inside a deafening, dangerous factory. Not playing, not learning, just surviving. It sounds like something torn from the pages of a dystopian novel. But for tens of thousands of children in Victorian England, this wasn't fiction. It was life. The world applauded the Industrial Revolution as a golden age of progress. But behind the smoke and steel, there were children, forgotten, broken, and forced to grow up far too soon. How did humanity's greatest leap forward become a living nightmare for its youngest? Stay with me. What you're about to hear will break your heart and open your eyes to the hidden cost of progress. The Victorian era, spanning from 1837 to 1901, was a time of remarkable change. Great strides in technology and industry transformed Britain into the world's leading economic power. But this rapid progress came at a steep price. While the wealthy enjoyed the luxuries of modern life, a large segment of the population faced dire conditions. Among the most vulnerable were the children, who were often forced into the workforce to support their struggling families. Children as young as 5 or 6 could be found working in factories, mines, and on the streets. The promise of progress and prosperity seemed to bypass them entirely, leaving them to face grueling hours, dangerous conditions, and minimal pay. These young workers became an integral part of the industrial machine, their small hands and nimble bodies prized for tasks that their older counterparts could not easily manage. Today, we uncover the harsh reality of Victorian child laborers. From their cramped homes to their long, grueling work hours, their lives were shaped by an industrial world indifferent to their suffering. You're 8 years old. Instead of grabbing your backpack for school, you're squeezing between cold, rattling machines in a factory or crouching in the pitch black of a coal mine. No toys, no games, just survival. This was life for countless children in Victorian Britain, tiny bodies doing the work of grown men in places that broke both backs and spirits. Factory work. In the roaring heart of textile mills, children were prized for one thing: their size. Small hands meant they could slip between whirring machines to fix a jam or grab a dropped thread. But one wrong move could mean mangled fingers, or worse. Imagine standing for 14 hours straight on a wooden floor slick with grease. Your lungs sting from the dust-filled air. You're dizzy, your stomach empty. But you keep going, because stopping means a beating, or losing the pennies that help feed your family. Now picture being sent underground before you've even hit your teenage years. You're a trapper, sitting alone in a tunnel, opening and closing wooden doors to let air through. You can't even see your own hands. The silence is so thick, you can hear your own heartbeat. Or maybe you're a hurrier, dragging carts of coal heavier than your own body. Your back strains, knees bleed from the rocky ground, and you pray the tunnel doesn't collapse. You don't dream of play or school anymore. You dream of seeing the sun again. Not all children were trapped indoors. Many worked on the streets, selling newspapers, shining boots, or sweeping chimneys. It sounds freer, but it wasn't safer. Chimney sweeps were often as young as 6. They were pushed up narrow, soot-choked chimneys with only a brush and a prayer. Some got stuck. Others never came back down. And those cheerful newsboys shouting headlines? They were freezing, hungry, and under constant pressure. Sell enough papers, or else. These weren't jobs, they were sentences. Childhood became a blur of bruises, exhaustion, and fear. And yet, for so many families, sending their children to work wasn't a choice. It was the only way to survive in a world that valued profits over people. It's still dark outside. Most children today are tucked under warm blankets, dreaming. But for a Victorian child, the day has already begun. Cold, hungry, and without hope. You wake in a cramped, damp room, packed with siblings. The mattress is straw. The air smells like mildew and smoke. No breakfast, just a crust of stale bread if you're lucky. Your clothes are thin, your boots, if you have any, barely hold together. It's raining, but there's no choice. You have to go. Your tiny feet splash through muddy alleys, dodging horse carts and coal smoke. You're not going to school. You're going to work. In factories, the machines never stop. You stand on aching legs, hands blistered from constant motion. The air is thick with dust. The noise is so loud, it drowns your thoughts. If you fall behind, you're hit. If you fall asleep, you're punished. In the mines, the silence is worse. You're crawling on hands and knees, dragging coal through suffocating darkness. Every creak of rock might mean a collapse. You're terrified, but there's no time for fear. Just push. Lunch? A few minutes on a cold floor, chewing whatever scraps you brought. No games, no laughter. Just silence and sore muscles. Some children sleep through their breaks, so exhausted they can't stay awake. When your shift ends, it's already night. Your walk home is slow, your body aching, but the day isn't over. There are chores, fetching water, helping younger siblings. Then you collapse, not to rest, but to recharge just enough to survive tomorrow. There was no childhood, only survival. Every day was a battle against exhaustion, fear, and hunger. And for many, there was no end in sight, just the same routine, repeated until their bodies gave out. For years, the cries of working children were drowned out by the clatter of industry. But slowly, quietly, people began to listen. Not everyone turned away. Some chose to fight. It started small, a few voices whispering against a tidal wave. Reformers, often dismissed as dreamers or troublemakers, wrote pamphlets, held town meetings, and pleaded with anyone who'd listen. They weren't politicians. They weren't powerful, but they had a deep, burning belief that no child should live and die under the weight of labor. They faced ridicule. Factory owners mocked them. Newspapers ignored them. Still, they kept going, because they'd seen what others refused to see. Then came the storytellers. Charles Dickens didn't just write fiction, he held up a mirror to society. In Oliver Twist, readers saw the street urchin they'd passed that morning. In David Copperfield, they saw a boy working himself to the bone while the world watched and did nothing. Newspapers joined in. Headlines began to report what had once been whispered. Crushed fingers, collapsed lungs, collapsed children. Families reading over breakfast suddenly realized the cost of their cheap goods. What once hid behind factory doors now stared them in the face. Followed pain. In 1833, the Factory Act limited children's hours. Small, imperfect, but historic. More laws followed, limiting hours, setting minimum ages, requiring schools. But factory owners found loopholes. Enforcement was weak. Children still suffered. The battle wasn't over, but the tide was turning. As public outrage grew, so did hope. Philanthropists funded schools. Orphanages opened. Religious groups offered food and education. For some children, the cycle was finally broken. These weren't flawless fixes, but for the first time, children were seen not as workers, but as children. The Victorian era was cruel, but it also sparked a fire, a movement of words, laws, and ordinary people who refused to stay silent. That movement laid the first bricks on the road to justice. The children of Victorian Britain didn't choose their fate. They were born into a system that saw them not as individuals, but as tools, small, silent, and expendable. But their suffering wasn't in vain. Their pain lit a fuse that sparked outrage, reform, and change. Laws were passed. Schools were built. The world began to see childhood not as a luxury, but a right. Yet the fight is far from over. Reflect on progress today. Millions of children still work in fields, factories, and dangerous jobs across the globe. Some mine cobalt for our electronics. Others sew clothes we wear. The shadows of the Victorian era haven't disappeared. They've only shifted. We've made progress. But progress isn't permanent. It requires vigilance. It requires compassion. So what can you do? Support organizations that fight child labor. Speak out against unfair practices. Learn where your products come from. Share these stories, because awareness is the first step toward change. Every action, no matter how small, sends a message. We will not look away. The story of Victorian child labor isn't just a history lesson. It's a warning and a call. A call to protect childhood, to defend dignity, and to ensure that no child, anywhere, is ever forced to trade their dreams for survival.